Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm your host, Ashley Russo, president and executive producer of The Peak TV. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers who are winners in their field and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. All right, everybody, welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo. I'm so happy to be here with my good friend, amazing leader, Kim Fraites-Dow. She is the CEO of the Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, and she has just become a good friend, showing us so many amazing things girls can do. I've loved it. So, Kim, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ashley. It's great to be here.
You know, but when we get into it, I want to find out a little bit about your upbringing, and we're going to go full circle. So we'll come back to the Girl Scouts. But first, just tell me a little bit about little Kimmy. What was little Kimmy like?
That's
was she
so
called
funny.
Little Kimmy?
Yes, I was.
I saw
called
you
Little
smile
Kimmy.
there.
Yes, it's Kimmie.
Okay.
That's how I spelled it. And a lot of people ask me if my name's Kimberly, but it's just Kim because that's my mother's maiden name.
That's great. That's a good use. Okay, I love that.
Yeah, my mom is a first-generation immigrant from South Korea, and so that's where that name came from.
Very cool. Now, do you speak Korean?
I do not, but I know how to order my favorite food, so there's that.
The priorities. Priorities. That's so funny. Tell me a little bit about that journey, a little bit about your parents and your family structure, because it's so interesting. I think that, to find someone who comes as first generation, that's got to be a cool story.
It is a cool story. My mom is a very resilient leader for our family, but not necessarily in the ways that I lead. So my father is a retired Air Force officer, so we traveled around a lot the first half of my childhood, if you will. And I have an older brother, a year and 10 days older than me.
Ooh, Irish twins.
He and I were, two peas in a pod, did everything together, rode bikes. The bikes turned into F-15 fighters. They also turned into chestnut brown horses, we
I love
did
it.
that. We had the privilege of living internationally for 3 years, in grade school. So we lived in Germany. Which was amazing. So we got to travel all throughout Europe as a kid.
Now, did you go to an English-speaking school there? Did you go to a bilingual school?
I went to an English-speaking school. So we lived in a village, Bräunigweiler, and the bus came at dark 30 in the morning, picked us up, and we took the bus to the base, and that's where we went to school, the Air Force Base.
How interesting. Did you make friends there? Were there lots of other kids? I mean, what's that experience like?
It's amazing. I'm glad that my parents chose to live in a village. A lot of folks also live on the base. So there's base housing, and then you can live off base. So we had both German friends as well as friends from the base. We had, there are several other, American kids that lived in the village too, so we were friends with them, but also friends at school. It was like K through 3 in one area, 4 through 6 in another area, and 7 through 9th in another area. That was the school setup.
What do you feel you learned from that experience? I mean, something had to have been pretty formative. What ages were you there?
3rd through 5th grade.
Okay.
I learned a lot. I mean, I did learn a little bit of German. So I, probably know more German than Korean. But I learned a lot about, what makes me, because when you're moving around a lot, you have to have a strong sense of self or you might get lost. So that's one of the things I think that my parents really instilled in all of us is feeling grounded in who we are. I had the clarinet was my friend. I, had started playing before we moved and I spent a lot of time with music when I was there. And you learn how to connect with other people and, how to make friends. It's not always easy moving around like that, but it gives you confidence because you start to learn how to do that. And
you mentioned your brother, too, and I'd imagine that would be another reason, not just close in age, but that experience that at least your sibling is kind of there as your first buddy.
Yes, and my parents used to call us the left brain, right brain crew. My older brother is wicked smart.
You're wicked smart.
Well, but he's, has a PhD, MBA, and I think because our parents knew how to kind of dig deep in the areas that resonated most with us, it gave us a lot of confidence in being special.
I love that. What a cool experience.
Yeah, and then when I turned 12, I got a little baby brother.
Wow.
And he's like the apple of all of our eyes.
I have a little brother like that too, actually. So it's funny now. It's like we're both adults, but not really.
Yeah,
I always feel like he's the baby. I don't know how you guys feel, but
well, I always get blamed for his bad behavior growing up, but that's okay. I'll take it.
You took the heat. That's really cool. And so then where did you go to high school, and what was that experience? Were you in one place for high school, or did you move around?
My father retired from the Air Force when my baby brother was born, actually. So he's called a retirement present. I was in 6th grade at the time. We moved back to Florida where my parents had bought a house when I was younger. So Florida is really home for me. A little town called Niceville. Yes, it does exist.
Isn't that funny?
It's awesome.
I noticed that because I've seen on your social media that you go to Niceville to visit your parents. So I guess that means,
It's a lot of times people, you feel biased when you're talking about it, but I think that it's a wonderful place to grow up. A really nice mix of both military families as well as non-military families. It's right on the coast of Florida, northwest coast. So it's like beautiful white beaches and all of that. So I went back to Florida. I really, again, carried through with the clarinet, kept playing. And my last 2 years of high school, I actually went to a boarding school for the arts. So I went to Interlochen Arts Academy in Interlochen, Michigan, for 2 years.
When did you know that the clarinet was something you wanted to be serious about? Because that's a big commitment. And now I have kids that are that age making those kind of bigger life decisions. And I think it's challenging to figure out what you really want. So what was it about music and the clarinet that resonated so strongly with you that you felt like you needed to go to a specialized school for music?
Well, I think the answer is never simple, right? So some of it had to do with how I came to the clarinet in the first place. I was taking piano lessons from this man who was like my grandfather in my mind. I didn't have grandparents growing up. Both sets of my grandparents were deceased by the time I was 3. So I kind of latched on to my aunt, who was 25 years older than my dad. My Aunt Evelyn was really like my grandmother. And then this man, who is the father of our priest, was a retired band director, and he had pianos and all kinds of musical instruments all throughout his house. And so every time I achieved a lesson, accomplishment, he would give me a gift of some kind. First it's squishy balls or whatever, and then ultimately he said, okay, well, you're reading music now, and at a certain point you can pick whatever instrument in this house you want to learn, and I'll teach it to you.
Wow.
So I picked the clarinet. And then he passed away. And then his wife gave me his clarinet when he died. So that's how I came to the clarinet. So it was very meaningful to me.
Absolutely. What a connection, such an emotional connection to that exact instrument, probably because of the timing.
Yeah, so I was emotionally connected to the clarinet at age 7. Wow. And then it became kind of my thing. So I think that, the rest of the path isn't completely straight as far as that's concerned, but there was certainly summers where my father made sure that I was practicing 3 hours a day, and I had to account for that by the time he got home. And if I hadn't done it yet, I had to continue to, so it was there's a lot of discipline built into it. And then innate talent, but also skills that are built. And then I started achieving. So, in middle school, making the all-county band and that kind of stuff. In high school, making the all-state band. And then sort of in a state, then you see beyond the state competition, what's the opportunity, similar to your daughter, right? So you do you go to a certain level, and then you become national competition. So
right.
That's what...
The stage gets bigger and the goals change, and
Yeah, so that's where Interlochen came in for me. And then I got to go to school with all these people who were interested in being top performers in music, in visual arts, and theater, and dance, and it was a great place.
That's awesome. And when you were there, what was that experience like being away from home? I mean, you had traveled a lot as a kid, so I guess you were sort of comfortable with that.
I ate a lot at night.
It was like a college experience.
Yes, I gained the freshman 15 in my senior year of high school. It was very cold in Michigan, so there's very little to do at night. I had two best friends, and the three of us used to hang out every night. And it was one of our jobs to always order food before, Vesuvio's closed. So, it was either breadsticks or pizza or Ben and Jerry's, and on some nights we had all three.
Aren't you glad you did it, though? Because I always think now, like, we cannot do that. Like, the amount of thought that goes into, like, a piece of pizza.
I know.
At this age.
I know. Yeah.
I think,
So I ate a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the message to young people. Like, just eat the pizza, eat the donut. Someday you won't be able to.
and it makes for a very entertaining, photo montage.
I love it. That's great.
But I learned a lot. I made some of the best friendships of my life that still continue today. When you spend that much time with people, you develop really personal, intimate relationships, which is great. And I learned that I could, be okay on my own. Gave me a lot of confidence. A lot of parents, I think, worry about that. But the flip was true for me, where it's like, okay, you're going to send me off and do this. It's a scary moment for parents. But then what it built in me was a lot of confidence in myself.
I think that's such a great message, because this is something I'm going through right now, and I find that I have a 16 turning 17-year-old son, and we let him do a lot of kind of independent activities that are pretty normal if, say, you're in Europe. But everybody looks at you sideways in America, like, oh, you let him take a train to New York City? And I'm like, well, if he doesn't learn to do this stuff now, when's he going to learn?
Yes.
I'd rather he did some of it where I have there's a conversation around the plan and things like that. So I love to hear that.
Yes.
I think it's important. So thank you. It's very affirming as a parent to say, let your kids fly a little bit and
absolutely
see what you learn from that. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, I want to talk about what steps were next, college, first jobs, and we'll get into it a little bit. So we're here, Kim Fraites-Dow from the Girl Scouts. Stay with us. Time to take your workout outdoors. Discover Lehigh Valley is a great resource for finding easily accessible nature trails with stunning views and challenging terrain. Whether you're exploring the Delaware and Lehigh Trail or going for a jog on the Ironton Rail Trail, explore Discover Lehigh Valley to get you started. Follow them on Instagram, Lehigh Valley, PA. All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm here with Kim Fraites-Dow of the Girl Scouts, and we were talking a little bit about growing up in a military family, growing up with an immigrant mom, knowing more German than Korean. It's pretty exciting. And most importantly, playing the clarinet. And you not just played the clarinet, like lots of people played musical instruments, which is something we've actually found out from the podcast, but you were really a phenom in a certain way. You really were into it. So tell me what happened next. Like, you go to this boarding school. Where do you go to college? Where does the clarinet follow you?
So I audition for college. So it's not just like an application process. You do like live auditions for conservatory. It's pretty stressful, but it's also an awesome experience. You kind of think about, in a professional setting, non-musical professional setting, it's preparing for public speaking, that kind of thing. Maybe at first it's nerve-wracking, but then you kind of, if you're prepared, it's fine.
Yeah, that's interesting to look at it from a different perspective, now in your life looking back. Mm-hmm. Of course, at the time, you were probably just thinking, just like nail the piece.
Yes.
But in reality, you were preparing a lot of other professional skills to be able to go and do that.
Yeah, and if I were to give any advice to a young person who's thinking about auditioning, just to know that the folks that are listening for a lot of things. They're not listening for perfection necessarily. They're listening for expression and, preparedness and confidence and ability and that kind of thing. So it's not, I think, when I was 17 and doing that, I was like, oh my God, if it's not perfect, it's not going to be okay. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot more than
which seems to always be the theme in the high school years, right?
Yeah.
That perfection concept. And meanwhile, life is so much more than that. So
yeah, I think
advice.
It's more just like, do you have something to say? Mm-hmm. And if you say it and it's not perfect, you said something. So that I went to the Eastman School of Music, which was my dream school. I got waitlisted at first, but then I got in. They typically accept 4 or 5 clarinetists per year. And I don't even know how many applicants. My dream teacher was there. He He was a retired Boston Symphony Orchestra musician who had also gone to Eastman. And he died when I was a freshman, unexpectedly.
Oh, my goodness.
So that was a major challenge to get through. I had an interim professor who was fantastic from Indiana University. He was offered the job but declined it. So then I had a substitute kind of teacher for a year while they were doing a national search. And then I had a permanent professor for my last 3 years there because I spent 5 years in college. So I did a double degree at the University of Rochester in psychology. So I applied to the University of Rochester when I was a sophomore because, as you can imagine, with that much change in what you thought was going to happen, I started kind of searching for other things that were interesting to me. So I started taking classes there and then applied and got into U of R, which is the parent school for Eastman. And I did 2 degrees then in 5 years. It was a great experience.
Amazing. Yeah. And why psychology? What was it that drew you to that field?
I think I have a real interest in other people. I'm very empathetic and I want to understand what motivates people. So that I can help them solve problems or be their best self or whatever. And I think that's kind of what drew me to that. And I learned a lot about myself and about what makes people tick through that.
So I would imagine if you're getting 2 degrees and you're involved in music the way that you were, that you didn't have a lot of time for part-time jobs.
Oh, I did though.
You did?
Oh,
okay.
yes.
So what were you doing? What was your very first job?
In college or my very
first job ever? I'm going backwards probably. But
my very first job was working for my mom's friend. So she was also Korean and she owned a novelty shop on the beach. Selling knockoff Gucci bags, Dooney and Burke bags, and some other things. And I managed the shop when I was like 15.
How fun is that? My daughter would love that job. She would think that was fabulous.
Fluorescent beach tees and Gucci bags. It's the way to go.
All right, so in sales.
Gucci bags.
Gucci. Just a slight turn to the G. I love it. And then what about in college? What kind of part-time jobs did you have then?
My first job, well, I did work study. So because I was on financial aid and scholarship, so I did work study kind of jobs. So, working in the admissions office and, data entry kind of stuff. But that, doesn't necessarily earn money. That's just helping to pay for school. And then I worked in a hair salon. I was the receptionist. I took perm rods out and washed people's hair occasionally. I slapped people in the face with those perm rods a couple times, so it wasn't the best necessary. I learned from that. When
you would take the spring out and it would go flying in there,
yeah. I learned, so that only happened a couple times. Sweeping hair. I think the most tedious thing about working in a hair salon in that role is you can imagine taking down all of the shampoo bottles and having to put them back up when you're dusting. Yeah, that's annoying.
Ooh, that's a lot of little tedious activity. Yeah, Interesting. Although maybe looking back, it gave you some attention to detail, or at least told you what you didn't want to do.
That's right. Or respect for people who have to do it all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was fun. I made some good friends there too. One of the stylists is still a really close friend of mine. So.
Oh, that's fun. I love that. So it's fun to have the people through the journey of your life, right? You've got all these different people. Are you still friends with anybody that you met when you were in Germany or when you were at boarding school?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I have, key people that you gravitate toward. I still have those people in my life from every stage. And when I turned 40 a couple of years ago, I revisited some of those relationships too, because I think it's important for me to remember who I am through all of those stages and also to introduce that to my kids. I think once you become a mom, you start focusing on your kids, and it's your kids and your kids, and you don't realize hey, I know how to double dutch. Maybe my kids would be interested in that, that kind of stuff. So
totally.
I was, trying to kind of bring that up.
I love that because it's so funny how often sometimes in the course of just a casual conversation, my husband or I might mention something from our childhood, and the kids will sort of stop and say, "Why didn't you ever tell us that?" And I don't know, I just didn't think to tell you that. So that we're kind of finding one of the things they love as teenagers are these look back, some stories of what were you like at that age and things like that. So
and it's fun.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
All right, so you graduate college.
Yes.
What happens next? What's that first job?
Okay, well, first job is I moved to New York City. That was a big dream of mine. And I worked at the Juilliard School as an administrative assistant in the vocal arts department.
Wow.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. So now you're Juilliard, right? It's an amazing place to be surrounded by artists, I would imagine.
Yes, and a lot of my friends from Interlochen were there. So Eastman, Juilliard, Curtis, these are typically the top 3 conservatories in the country. So I worked there, for paycheck and health insurance and that kind of stuff. And then I tried to keep up my craft as well. So that's what I did.
And were you able to play the clarinet in New York in any capacity? Were you
not really?
It was just
a
passion or friends or?
Yeah, what I learned is that if you're going to really pursue music as a career, you have to be happy with the most menial type of things, right? And that there were great musicians competing for community orchestra jobs. Because it was just another opportunity to play.
Right.
So I also went to NYU in between my 4th and 5th years of college to do a certificate program in arts administration. So I was introduced to the business of music.
Oh, what a cool idea.
Yeah. So, and those courses were fantastic because they were taught by professionals working in the field. So, the CFO of American Ballet Theater, the chief fundraiser for Roundabout Theater, we're teaching fundraising and finance. So it was a great intro to what the opportunities were in that field or in those fields in New York.
What I love about your story as it's unfolding here is that it's very diverse. And I think that you kind of figured out early on, it sounds like, how to make sure that you were growing your skill set to have some diversity and some options. And I hear that a lot, that people get very singularly focused, which of course that has it's got upside and downside too. But I'm curious, when you look back, was that calculated? Was that accidental? And how valuable has it been in the rest of your life in the last 20 years to kind of have had, psychology and an arts administration and the music and all those things?
Yeah, I mean, I had epic battles with my dad in college, right? So I think that because your parents are so focused on your success and happiness, whatever that means, sometimes they have an image of what they think that will be. And I think that because they had honed the music so much for me, they thought that had to be what it was, and also that that's where I found my worth. And that wasn't true. Like, I found my worth because of them in just who I am and being part of the family and my friendships and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that what my parents really instilled in all of us is that we're special. And
what
special.
A gift, right?
Yeah. And I believe that about myself, and I didn't mean that I was only special because of this. It was just that I'm special. So I think that confidence carried through in all of the different things that I tried, and each thing that I tried gave me more confidence.
Yeah.
So, I was like the head of the student body at Eastman my last couple of years there. That was really fun. I got to work with administrators and leaders and, both students and faculty, and just trying new things gave me, like you said, the diversity of experience to know that I could do a lot of stuff, and that, a lot of joy came from trying new stuff.
I love that. Yeah, it's nice to have that foundation and that support system, and it is hard, you get so focused on the plan that you think is going to work for your kids, but maybe forgetting and all that, the journey that comes along with it.
Yeah.
So as you go through this job at Juilliard, tell me a little bit about what you're learning and how that kind of pushes you into what's next for you, because you've come a long way and you've done a lot of different things over these years. And I kind of want to get to, in our last segment, talking about your job now as CEO of the Girl Scouts. So what did you learn from that first employment?
Service, attention to detail, differences in leadership, working with lots of personalities, as you can imagine. Vocal arts is all actors and musicians, and the faculty there is amazing, but also artists. So it's humility and grace and all of those things I think I learned through that job. I was only in it for a year. So it wasn't my landing pad by any means to be an administrative assistant there, but I learned a lot from the director. She had a lot of patience, but she was also strong, with me. So I understood what levels of performance were expected and acceptable in a professional job like that. So it was great.
Fast forward me a little bit. Take me through your 20s and
yes.
Where did life take you?
So I left that job and I went to work for the Piatigorsky Foundation, which is an organization that's named for Gregor Piatigorsky, who's a famous Russian cellist, and he brought his craft to people across the country in high school gyms and community centers, etc. So I did that a couple years, and then I became the managing director of that for a couple years. So that was my first time managing a nonprofit.
I was just going to say, so that was sort of your entree into the nonprofit world.
Yes.
And what kind of, I guess, challenges and lessons did you learn entering that world? Because it is its own world.
So many. We were housed within an accounting firm that a couple board members were partners of. We were right across from the World Trade Center, and we were relocated after that. That was a very difficult experience for all of us, and I think we learned a lot about survival through that too. And
were you at work that day?
I was not. So we haven't talked about boys at all, which probably is a good thing. But what happened that morning?
But let's.
What happened that morning is my then boyfriend was traveling to Europe that morning. He was getting on an early flight, but was kind of delaying my departure to work because we were trying to, accomplish a few things. So I was late and waiting on the A train platform. And I lived in what I call upstate Manhattan. And and his mom lived in California. And so 3 hours later, 3 hours earlier, watching the Today Show. So I see the train coming at me in one direction. I see him running and jumping the turnstile in the other direction. And he's like, look, I know you're already late and you're already mad at me, but my mom said she saw a plane hit the World Trade Center. And, I know she's crazy, but, I think you should wait. I was like, the door's opening. I'm like, okay, fine. So I'm like disgruntled and going back to the apartment, calling my boss.
I have chills
I'm so
because
sorry.
It's hard to describe when if people didn't live through it, what that was like. But when you look back on those moments and think of all the things that could have,
I would have been dropped off. The A train drops you off, and where I got off was right underneath the World Trade Center. So I would have gotten dropped off. So the A train kept running because they didn't know what was going on. So I would have either seen a bunch of things that I could never unsee, or something worse than that. And so that's what happened. And I'm on the phone with my boss as the second plane hits, and etc. Luckily I was able to reach out to my folks before the cell phone towers were not working that day, so nobody was worrying about my physical safety.
Sure.
So yeah.
But traumatic. It was. Wow. So after you lived through that experience, which basically is pretty miraculous. I mean, at some point, do you think I'm supposed to still be here for something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I broke up with him and moved to Philly. No, not directly afterwards, but a lot happened in our personal lives, and I moved to Philadelphia and worked for the Philadelphia Orchestra for 5 years. Moved with my best friend, who I met at Interlochen. And we had a great time. As talk about friends as family in your 20s, and she definitely was that for me. So worked for the Philadelphia Orchestra in fundraising
So now you've gotten the business side at Juilliard and the other foundation, and now you're sort of getting the fundraising piece is coming together. All right, well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, I want to talk about the Girl Scouts and all the amazing things that happened there and how you ended up there and what's next.
Okay.
All right, stay tuned, everybody. There's nothing like wintertime in the Christmas city, but any time of year, Bethlehem's rich history, culture, food, and fun make it a great hangout spot. Take a walk on the artsy South Side, catch a great band at Steel Stacks, or enjoy the quaint history of Hotel Bethlehem. There are so many options, but before you book your trip, head over to Facebook and like Lehigh Valley, PA. Before you know it, you'll have a full itinerary of places you won't want to miss. Hey everybody, welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I'm here with my good friend, Kim Fraites-Dow. She's the CEO of the Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, and she has shared her amazing life story with us. Kim, you've done a lot. I mean, we're the same age, and I feel like you've lived this incredibly full
I feel the
life.
Same about you, Ashley. Are you serious? Come on.
Well, I love it. I mean, everything from having a Korean mother, immigrant mother, to living in Germany, to going in Florida, to playing the clarinet at a boarding school, working in Juilliard, New York. It's amazing. What a cool journey. But now you're in this very cool place in your life. So talk to me a little bit about first your husband and your children.
Sure.
And just your family.
So I met my husband Kevin when I worked at the orchestra. I was new to Philadelphia and kind of a sub on a work event, and he worked for Wachovia at the time, who was the season sponsor. So he came to the event and I met him there. And then the rest obviously is history with that. We have two beautiful children, Ella, who's 8 and she's a brownie, and Elijah, who is 7 and he is a dinosaur. And we call him Elijahsaurus Rex. And they're they're what I've always wanted to be, and do. I wanted to be a mom, I think, since my baby brother was born. So it's every single day when I say Elijah, I usually say John Paul first, which is my baby brother's name. So Elijah, John Paul, Elijah. So, but yeah.
We do a lot of that in our house too, because my husband also has younger siblings, quite a few years younger, and I've got younger siblings like your little brother, and we mix the names up all the time with our kids. And they're like, when are you going to get it? Like, we've been around a long time now. Don't you know our names?
Yeah. So they're a lot of fun. Ella is really into horseback riding, as you know.
I know. I'm so proud. Got to see you guys at the Devon Horse Show. That was fun.
Yeah, she's enamored with it, and she's also really into fitness somehow. And then
that's cool.
Yeah, which is great because she's very thoughtful about that. And then my son has learning differences, so the journey with him has not been straight either. He is very empathetic, very thoughtful child, really funny, and we have a great time together. So.
It's interesting with the learning differences because our daughter got diagnosed with kind of later processing issues, and it's lots of stuff in our family, siblings and nieces and nephews. And what I'm finding through the journey is I think that it's a way to sort of stop and appreciate different things in people, because we have such a narrow view in society, especially with school, of what's quote unquote normal or what you're supposed to be. So I don't know if you found this with Elijah, but I think it gives you a different way to look at the world. It's like a totally different perspective and a different window to look out.
It is. I was talking to a 12th grader who was leading a group of first and second graders. And she learned through that process about the school thing that you're talking about, that the opposite of inclusion is fitting in. And I thought that was such a powerful thing to say, is, if
that
our
is
goal,
a powerful thing to say. That could be a bumper sticker. Yeah,
if our goal is to really create an inclusive society or an inclusive culture at our work or in schools, then we should be meeting people where they are and helping them to achieve.
And not so worried about fitting in. Yeah, that's interesting. So tell me how you've got your beautiful family, and tell me a little bit about how you end up with the Girl Scouts and what that journey's been.
So that was luck and fate and connections. So I was working at the Franklin Institute at the time. So I worked at the orchestra for 5 years and then the Institute for 3 years. My scientist brother was like, dude, get out of my lane. But I really enjoyed it. It was really just 3 fantastic years there. And I had a baby. Ella was born with a cleft lip and palate. And so she went through a lot of medical procedures her first year of life. And I had kind of plateaued at the Institute for, reasons that weren't because of me. They were, organizational sort of dynamics for other people. And that was an opportunity, I think, for me to not feel like I was going to be there forever. So I was approached while on maternity leave by Natalie Picane, who is my predecessor and mentor at the Girl Scouts, asking if I would consider, working with her. She's a great leader, wonderful, strong woman, and had a vision for Girl Scouts in Eastern Pennsylvania. And so I took a leap and joined the senior management team as a chief development and marketing officer, had a seat at the table that I hadn't had that experience before. I was really an open vessel for everything that she had to offer, and was so grateful for her feedback. Some of it was not easy to hear, but really helped to develop my executive presence and various other things, and really learned a lot. So that's how I got to Girl Scouts. She was looking for a loyal partner in that work, and that's what I provided to her.
For people who, everybody knows the Girl Scouts, right? We all know the brand, we all know the cookies. We're certainly really blessed in the Lehigh Valley. I think we've got an awesome group of women here and girls and troop leaders. But you represent the Philadelphia area, you represent Berks County. Mm-hmm. So tell me just a little bit about the Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania. And for people who may not be familiar, what is the mission and what is the point?
So the Girl Scouts is an organization that's been around for 107 years. In Eastern Pennsylvania, we serve 9 counties. We have about 40,000 girls almost, with the help of 15,000 adult members. The mission is why we're all here and working and volunteering, which is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. Our Girl Scouts learn how to discover a strong sense of self through all kinds of different opportunities and, like I was saying before, trying new things. They learn to connect with other people and value the power of diversity. So, whereas you may join your troop in a small town, you get to meet all kinds of people through Girl Scouting. And then they learn to take action, identify problems in their community, present solutions, and make the world a better place. So what I think about this work is that we are helping people become whole people while they are empathetically thinking about the world and making it better.
Yeah, just having participated in something like World Thinking Day, which is something the Girl Scouts do with my daughter several times, it's so cool because not only does it bring girls from the region together, but it also does make them stop and think about the world beyond the town they live in or the state that they're from. And there's just so many cool girl experiences. I think a lot of times people think of the badges and the sashes and the cookies, which is all fun. Yeah. But the thing I've really come to learn, and really experientially from our work together, is some of these like crazy, incredibly cool, life-altering, world-altering projects these girls are embarking on. Yes. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, so the girls, they like I said, they think about what is important to them, and then they solve problems. So every project that a girl takes on is led by her. We don't assign problems to people to solve, right? So some of my favorite examples are, a girl who had learned sign language as her second language and volunteered to be a chaperone for a school for the deaf field trips. So to be the translator for the bus driver, to be the translator for whatever. And the bus got into an accident. And she was the translator for the first responders who are trying to help these kids who couldn't communicate. And so because of that experience, she, reflected on that. If I wasn't there, what would have happened? And, all these kinds of things. And she developed a basic sign language course that she then delivered to the first responders in her town, and is now sustainably being used by first responders in a lot of towns. So,
incredible.
Yeah.
And you say it's incredible, but at the same time, it's kind of typical of Girl Scouts that really stick with it, as they go to the bronze, the silver, the gold level.
Yeah.
The projects always blow me away. I'm a product of an all-girls high school.
Yes.
And my husband is a product of an all-boys high school. So we're pretty big fans of single-sex education, or opportunities, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So, in this age where everything's kind of becoming co-ed, tell me why it's important for girls to have a place, in your opinion. I certainly think it's super important. I just can't say enough about what I gained as a person by being in an environment every day supported by women, for women, with women, and I feel like it literally changed the whole imprint of my life. So tell me why you feel, as the leader of the Girl Scouts of Eastern PA, and why Girl Scouts across the country feel strongly about providing all-female opportunities for women.
I think that there are so few of those opportunities now. And the Girl Scouts is a safe place for girls to try new things, to experience challenges and learn from setbacks without any of the pressures that come from being in a co-ed environment. We know a lot about girls at Girl Scouting and all the different ages, what makes them tick, what they're concerned about. And I think in Girl Scouts, we try to temper some of those societal things so that girls can really have an unbiased opportunity to do what they do best, be themselves. The state of this country still is that only 20%, and that's a high number in some people's view, of leadership roles are held by women. So the unconscious bias that continues to exist in our society, in companies, in universities, in the media, it's still part of how we're living as women and as girls. So whatever we can do to create an opportunity for girls to really grow, to learn, to understand what their talents are outside of that biased environment, that's what Girl Scouting provides.
I love it.
We have a lot of stories of leaders who are either involved as donors or board members or volunteers who have gone through those kind of same experiences, and what they learned in their all-girls college or in their all-girls high school is that they can be the leader of, the radio station, whereas they might not even be considered.
It truthfully never dawned on me until I got into college and the workforce that things were not an option. I mean, it never crossed my mind. In other words, if I thought I could do it, I was in an environment that said, you can do it.
Right.
So I didn't realize that girls felt other ways until the world opened up to me a little bit because of that environment I had been kind of raised in.
Right, so, but that's what gives you confidence, and it also is your compass for when things don't feel right? You're like, well, I don't know why this isn't happening, because it should be happening because I did this, and this. So maybe there's something else happening here that you can challenge and move it forward, because you're not going to just sit there with that.
No, you're right. You're right. Well, courage, confidence, and character, Kim. It's all about it. Well, before we let you go, we do a little rapid fire questions. We should tell the audience that you have not been given these questions in advance.
Okay.
So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Your best holiday memory?
Family snuggle buggles.
Is there a holiday you love above all?
Christmas.
Your favorite Halloween costume?
Oh,
now it can be one that you wore or one that someone wore that you envied. It doesn't matter to me.
I mean, my daughter's witch costume last year was off the chain. Really good.
Really good?
Yeah.
Was she into it?
Her face makeup in particular.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. If you could have any superpower, what would your superpower be?
Flight. That way I could see my parents whenever I wanted.
Love it. All right. If you're a Netflix or Hulu watcher, is there any show that you have recently or loved to binge watch?
Stranger Things on Netflix.
Okay. Is there a place on your bucket list as a destination that you want to go that you've never been?
That I've never been? Because my bucket list thing is I want to go back to Germany because I haven't been there since I was a kid. But that I've never been, Bali.
Okay, that's a good one. One of those huts over the water. I know.
Why not?
I think that's a great one. All right, if you could bring one thing on a deserted island, what would it be?
My family.
Okay, I guess we can count them as one unit.
Yeah, I mean, if they just all come in one bubble.
Together.
My mom could cook, and we could just like hang out.
That would be perfect.
She's like the best.
And the last thing I'm going to ask is to turn the table on me, and you can ask me one question.
Now that you are doing your thing, you are a female business leader, you have this amazing company. What is next for you after this? And is it stages of life, or is it, I don't know.
It's a great question. It's something I've been thinking a lot about. So I think what's next for me is to move my expertise into a more consulting role, and to give myself some more balance and free time, because I have kids who are only home for another 3 years. And making sure I have time to be at the matches or participate in activities with them is great. The one thing that's awesome about business ownership is I do have a phenomenal team, and my time is flexible. So I can flex, but I also kind of work all the time. So I'm trying to get some more support under me to help me have a little more free time. So I think next for me is consulting and balance. That's what I'm working on. I'm saying it out loud so it happens.
I think you're fantastic. And I think that, maybe you could also consider leadership development for women, because you give so much to the people that you work with. And I think that you have some observations and feedback that could help people feel great about themselves.
Thanks, Kim. Well, we're working on maybe a little, what are we calling it, Dakota? How-to series or something?
Yeah.
We're working on some sort of where I would give, I give them life hacks. You can cut this. Life hacks all the time of this is how you got to stay out of white pants. This is what you have to always carry this with you. Because it's like a bunch of they're 5 years older than my kids, So I'm constantly doing this, not realizing I'm doing it. And they're like, so we think that you should do a thing.
I think so too.
I don't know if it's leadership development, but it's personal development anyway.
Yeah, I know. I want to write a book for my daughter.
Trying to keep them all alive.
I want to write a book for my daughter that's just called You're Welcome.
That's perfect. Kim Fraites-Dow,
yes.
Thank you so much for being here. This has been a lot of fun. I learned a lot about you, and I think we're going to have to hear you play the clarinet at some point. I mean, that's really the thing I'm dying to hear.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Thanks for joining us, CEO, Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania. Kim, thanks for joining us on Unscripted. Until next time, everybody.